I would probably take an average 1-2 grinder playing his A game over an average 25-50 grinder playing his C game any day.
You're listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. Each week, you'll get to peek inside the greatest minds in the game and discover what makes them successful.
Mental toughness separates those that can't handle the stress.
If you're going to treat it like an amateur, you're probably going to have amateur results.
Here are your hosts, Elliot Rowe and Adrian Talenchik Rousum.
So welcome to the show. We've got a big guest this week. We've got Polk coming on. He's all over YouTube and Twitch at the moment, so it's going to be a lot of fun, isn't it, Adrian?
Yeah, definitely. I love watching him play micro stakes and big stakes, and kind of the flux of playing in between all the levels is really an interesting dynamic.
It's one of those things where when you see one of these top guys head down and then start to try and prove he can do it again, and I think it's going pretty well for him at the moment. I think he's making some money in his challenge. So let's give Doug a call and see what he has to say. So Doug, thanks for coming on to the show. If you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thank you for having me here on the show today. My name is Doug Polk, and I come from an online background. I started playing poker something around, I guess, 10 years ago now. And I began by playing the very small stakes cash games and kind of worked my way up through the online scene, primarily specializing in Heads Up No Limit. And then once I kind of reached the top of that, I moved over to playing more live tournaments, more live cash games, all of that kind of stuff. And since then have moved into more of the promotional side of poker, streaming, videos, all of that kind of stuff.
It's really great. I've been watching some of your promotional stuff, especially with regards to being on your Twitch channel. And I noticed you've been playing a lot of micro stakes. And as somebody who has played from the lowest stakes to the highest stakes, how big do you find that adjustment is going back and forth? It's pretty big. It was funny. I tweeted something a couple months ago where I had been playing some 5-card draw twice in the last few months. And the stakes of that 5-card draw in one game was 25 cent, 50 cent, and in the other was actually $1,000, $2,000 pot limit. So definitely a very wide range of stakes going on there. One common misconception that players really have about the micro stakes online is that you can't play a good balanced strategy. Like, no one's going to fold you because it's micro stakes. No one cares about money. They're just going to call you anyway. So you have to ditch playing good poker and just get aces and stack noobs. And don't get me wrong, there's a healthy portion of trying to get aces and stack noobs when you play at micro stakes online. But I kind of try to play my game sort of no matter what the stakes are. At higher stakes, you can make a bit more of an adjustment to players, because when you look at people that are playing in the really high stakes games in the world, it's not a huge player pool. It's hard to put an exact number on it, but it's not a ton of guys. So you tend to have some specific reads on the way that they play hands, their overall style, that kind of stuff. When you play micro stakes, obviously a lot more of a crapshoot. You're going to sit at a table, and then there's probably going to be a huge wait list, and you're going to play with just random players. So I would say that obviously the game is a lot softer at lower stakes. Obviously, there is more rake, so you have to be a little more careful with some of your pre-flop hand selection. But you should really try and just play your A game regardless of how much money you're playing for.
In terms of that switch to being more of a social media figure and playing publicly on Twitch, how did that feel for you as you made that transition?
It was interesting, because I've always been kind of someone that focused on playing good poker first and then everything else kind of second. And, until last year, I wasn't even on social media with the exception of a Twitter account where I would once in a while tweet something. So, I didn't like Snapchat, I didn't like Instagram, I didn't have a fan page on Facebook, didn't have any of that stuff, didn't do YouTube, didn't do Twitch. And so, when I started, Upswing Poker, my training site, I realized that I needed to get out there and promote myself and promote my company and promote what I'm doing. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess we're making all these accounts and we're going to see what we can do. In some ways, it's actually pretty rewarding. It's not as rewarding as when you have a big session at high stakes or something, but just putting in the work every day, trying to create strategies for growth, trying to put out good stuff that, people are going to enjoy, and trying to be creative. That's something that I think in the poker world gets kind of lost, especially when you look at players that are trying to play at high stakes. creativity is a part of life that, you know, makes it fun, and getting to embrace that in my own way, it's been an enjoyable process.
Oh, you definitely make things look pretty easy, but I'm sure that along the road you've had some hurdles to overcome. What sort of challenges have you had, both in poker and even in the launch of Upswing Poker? How have you overcome them?
So as far as hurdles go in my life, there's been a couple financial ones that I most remember. And right around Black Friday, I went in a really big downswing, lost the vast majority of my net worth, you know, in the mid to high 90s% of how much money I had. And it was right into Black Friday, and I couldn't play poker anymore while living in Las Vegas. And I just remember being absolutely dejected, you know, feeling like this is it. You know, I thought I could make this whole poker thing work, but, you know, I don't know if I can. Like, I'm in a position where I don't even know how many more months I'm going to be able to live here. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to have to go back to school? You know, I struggled like that. You know, that wasn't even like that long ago. I mean, that was something like six-ish years ago. And I decided that, you know, rather than trying to take pity on myself and trying to just feel bad about how unlucky I was that this happened to me, that I was going to work as hard as I possibly could. I was going to give this one last shot with everything I had, and I was going to see what I could do. So I just packed up all my stuff, and I drove to Vancouver, and I just sat down day one, and I was like, I'm playing heads up no limit until either I've got all the gold or I'm packing it in and heading home and finding a new path in my life. And yeah, I mean, it really worked out for me. I was lucky that I had a lot of skill in that format. I've always had success in that format. And, you know, when you're that hungry, when it's like make or break time, and you set everything that you have in your life towards achieving that goal, you can achieve some pretty amazing things. And then the second time was a couple of years ago, year and a half ago or so. I went on an insane downswing, considering, you know, the stakes I play and everything I'm doing. And I lost something around like $1.7 million. And I just remember looking at that number and being like, this is going to take me absolutely forever to get out of. You know, this is just like, this is insane, because now I have to play lower, I have to take smaller pieces, all this stuff. And, you know, it took about a year. It took about a year or so, maybe something around there. But, you know, I worked hard. I had success in some different game types. I actually managed to win a lot of it back streaming on Twitch. And after just about a year, I managed to actually fully recover from it. So, you know, that one wasn't quite as tough. It obviously really hurts when you go through something like that. And that's the thing in poker. You're going to go through times like that. Like, it's not if, it's when. You know, when you gamble as your job, you know, with an edge, yeah, in general, you win in the long run, but there are going to be stretches like that. And how you handle that adversity is going to really define who you are as a poker player.
Yeah, one of the things there, like, obviously you've reached the top of the game in heads-up play, and then you've gone on a downswing like that. Does that affect your confidence in your game, or is it something where you were still, you know, 1.5 million into that downswing, you're like, no, I'm still crushing, I'm just in a horrifically bad variance situation? Or was it starting to eat away at you a bit of, you know, is this poker done for me? Has the game changed?
Well, it's kind of interesting because of that downswing. I'm pretty sure personally I won money over that stretch. It was just staking and pieces and all kinds of stuff, which made me feel more confident in my game still, but made me feel pretty terrible about the fact that it was happening to me. So, you know, I guess it allowed me to really stay confident. I've always been a big believer in when you're winning, you know, sessions are going well and you can see the edge that you have, and you're just like, you're playing in a way where you don't really care about what the result is, but you are just trying to play the absolute best strategy. You have a confidence when you're winning that allows you to really make sure that you're still going for it the correct amount, you know? And I think that that's a really important element in poker. When you get nailed for like 20 or 30 or 40 buy-ins, it's really easy to be like, okay, I don't want to get stacked again. Like, I'm getting sick of just like running this bluff off into the nuts, and I'm just not doing this anymore. And that's honestly terrible, because that's when, like, now you are just playing losing poker. So I think that there's really no shame at all, and I've done this a bunch in my life, but there's no shame at all in dropping down considerably in stakes to just book some wins. You know, feel good about your game, play your game, and, you know, playing games you know you're winning. Book a few wins, get your confidence back, make sure, you know, still study, still look at what you're doing. Don't pretend that you're losing has nothing to do with how you're playing, because frankly, it probably has something to do with it. But at the same time, drop down, work on the fundamentals, book a few wins, and the higher stakes games are going to be there, when you're ready to be back in them.
Is there anything outside of studying or dropping down a few levels that you do in particular to keep your mindset strong?
That's a good question. In general, I find the studying process to be kind of soothing in a way. And at least, when I came up on Heads Up No Limit, it was a little bit theory based, but it was a lot more like opponent based. I definitely put more hours into studying the people that I played against rather than, what my baseline strategy will be by a wide margin. So whenever I would have like a big loss in Heads Up No Limit, or, the thing about heads up game types, when you lose, that means someone beat you. And that actually can be a little bit, I think, unnerving for some people. But when I just got to like step away from the table and analyze the way they played, look at the showdowns, look at their frequencies, understand what their goals are. When you see a bunch of numbers, you can see what they're like going for. Like you can see the parts of the game tree that they're really trying to play in. You can see what they think are important. There are some players that think it's really important to like not allow players to c-bet too much against you. So they just don't fold to c-bet much. And then there are some players that think it's totally fine to fold like a good chunk to c-bet, And nowadays it's a little more converged towards just trying to play very sound poker, at least at the higher level. But back in the day, there was a real mix of styles. So like going into the hands from the match, seeing what happened, seeing what they're trying to accomplish, and creating a good counter strategy always made me feel very confident going into my next match.
And I saw a video you made recently regarding mindset in poker, and I mean this jumps into that pretty well. That idea of not allowing your ego to get in the way of learning from your opponents and trying to fix the mistakes in your game. How key do you think that was in your success in your career?
That was extremely important for me. A lot of people think that I'm just like very brash and, talk like a bunch of shit about whoever and like go out there and just like, I'm the best, whatever. And don't get me wrong, like once I did get to the top of the heads up ladder, I did like a fair amount of that, although a good chunk of it was to try and bait people into actually playing me. But the thing is, that didn't mean that I felt like I had a perfect strategy by any stretch of the imagination, and that also didn't mean that I didn't think that there were certain parts of the game that other players weren't doing better than me. I think it's a pretty fair thing to say that almost everyone I've played along the way at Heads Up probably had some part of their game that they played better than I did. I just had more parts where I was doing better. So while I was climbing the ladder, if I was playing someone and they were doing something, it's really easy for us to get into this mindset of, oh, that guy's not doing what I'm doing, so that must be bad because he's not doing what I do. So he's like, that's a bad strategy. But that's a really unhealthy way of approaching the game of poker. What I prefer to do is, okay, so what is he trying to accomplish here? If I was doing his strategy, what kind of hands would I use? How would I balance it out? What are the goals he's trying to achieve here? And then look at some of the hands he showed down, and then decide if it's bad or not. And sometimes it will be quite bad, and I won't agree. In fact, usually. But occasionally, there will be players that I play, and I'll be like, wow, that was really smart. The way they're constructing this, the way that they're using this range for overbetting, the way that they're thinking about how removal works in this situation, the way that they're getting their range into a certain position, how often they check raise, all of that kind of stuff. Sometimes you're going to be like, wow, that's actually really cool, and I want to take from this and learn. So then after that, I would kind of map out what I think they were doing kind of roughly, make it my own a little bit, change up the hands a little bit, the way that I would create that range, construct that range. And then in the future, go in with this new weapon in my arsenal, which was I just took this thing that you were doing, and now I'm doing my own version of it that I think is, a good version of it. So, you don't want to ever put yourself in just this place where you think you're perfect and you have nothing to learn. Look, the best players in the world in any game, the best players out there are not playing perfect poker, with the exception of maybe Limit Holdem. So you always have something to learn. Be aware of that. Have an open mind. I'm not saying just put whatever you see into your game just because, you saw something, you're going to do it. Understand why. Learn how to create those ranges, and then put that into your game because that will make you a stronger player.
That's really great to hear. I mean, that's the beauty of poker, right? Is that there's not really an element of people playing absolutely GTO. When you're playing somebody and you're looking at like making labels, I find that people often want to be like, oh, that person bluff raised that river, what a fish. Like they just want to label people right away. How long does it take you, or how many hands does it take you to actually make labels, or what sort of notes do you take on players?
So when you play heads up no limit, especially at the higher levels, if you're getting action at all, with the exception of it being clearly a purely recreational player, but if you're getting action from any kind of reg, you know they're going to be pretty good. You know, they're not going to get to the higher stakes and just have like terrible fundamentals. They're going to have at least a relatively sound game. So I'm pretty. I don't like to make like quick judgments. I kind of like to let the sample speak for itself, see what their fold frequencies look like, see how often they take raise lines, see what kind of hands they show down as part of their whole strategy. The great thing about numbers is that they really don't lie, particularly in big samples, even though that's definitely not... What's the quote? Statistics... What's the quote about numbers lying or something?
I know the quote you mean.
There's some quote about it.
Yeah, about statistics being the greatest lie or something like that. Yeah.
Something along those lines. I actually take the opposite stance when it comes to playing heads up with someone. If you play 4K hands and they defend 78% in the big blind, they're probably defending around 78% in the big blind. So you can take that into your strategy, whether you think that's the right amount or the wrong amount or whatever, and you can like build a little bit around that. And so as you get more and more stats on the way someone plays, you can start to make kind of small adjustments around the edge. And so, like, there are definitely certain play styles I've played in heads up. There are definitely guys that like to bluff a lot. There are not many of those guys, but they are definitely out there and might be over bluffing. There are certainly guys that don't like to bluff very much, but tend to be stationy. There are guys that tend to play a little bit tight pre-flop, and then post-flop they just go insane. There's all kinds of different styles, but in general, I make small adjustments when I'm playing people at a high level because I know they're going to be playing, pretty good overall. When I'm playing in a tournament or a cash game with a lot of people I don't really know, I don't really make that many judgments about them other than if I see something that is truly egregious or, something that's quite telling. Like if someone limps in from mid with like 7-5 off, they're definitely getting a tag in some way or other. But in general, I try to stay away from this type of logic, which is, and this is a classic tournament player type logic. Oh, so this is the guy that did X thing. Okay, that's the first sentence. It's like a setup for the second sentence. Now, second sentence. So the hand starts, keep in mind, it's the guy that just did X thing. And it's kind of like they're trying to be like, oh, whatever I say is going to be reasonable because this other hand happened and like, look what they did over there. And then they go into a hand where they just start playing quite badly because they remember that the guy had that hand before. And it's kind of like, whenever someone talks to me about a hand like that, I'm always like, well, what do you like really want me to say? Like, I don't really agree with how you're playing this hand at all, and you're basing everything off of one showdown. Obviously, if you're right in that he's going to do this a bunch like that one hand, sure, this was fine. But like, if he's not, if he just did it one time, or, maybe he's like, oh, I'm not going to do this anymore or whatever, then your entire line here is just bad. So rather than like focusing on that individual element or individual showdown, I prefer to just continue to play my game, keep those things in mind, and again, make some small adjustments around the edges.
And that's, quite similar to what you were discussing again on those videos regarding, sometimes when you're working with a player who isn't that strong, them completely disagreeing with you and effectively saying, sorry, Doug, I disagree with you here, you're just wrong. And you were saying that's something that can happen in poker because of variance, but not something that would happen in a game like chess where people would, respect someone who's reached the top of the game. Would you want to go into that a little bit?
Sure. So that's actually basically the exact quote I said. I think it was on YouTube, where basically in my comment section on YouTube, which very mixed bag of what you're going to get in the comment section on YouTube, but whenever I analyze a hand...
I'm sure they're all massive winners, Doug.
Oh, I can only imagine. But whenever I analyze a hand, there's always a healthy portion of comments, something like 5, 10, 20%, that just say like, you're wrong, this is the answer. And whenever I look at those, I just think to myself kind of like, all right, so you went on YouTube, watched this video, and like you're going to just disagree with me even though, you probably don't even really play poker or you play very small stakes. Like, I just don't really understand, you know, and I'm not to say you can't disagree. Like sometimes I get some pretty well worded responses where they're like, well, I think that these factors matter and you know, to each their own. But yeah, there's this mindset in poker specifically compared to games that are, you know, poker's a game of skill. So is chess. But the results in poker are mainly variance, the short-term results. Long-term, it's skill, but the results short-term are mainly variance. Whereas in chess, very, very little variance. You know, so in like a community like chess, people aren't going to have a grandmaster talk about like a situation and then be like, "Oh, you're clearly wrong. Like, should have gone knight to f4 or whatever." You know, that's not going to really happen in that community because they're going to respect this person for having achieved what they've achieved in a game where there's no variance. Whereas in poker, you know, you might win a couple home game tournaments and be like, man, I'm really good at poker. These guys on YouTube have no idea what they're talking about. So luck it clouds how good players actually are at poker because you just see the numbers and you don't actually get to know how good they are. And that makes people feel like, you know, no matter how good you've done or how you know, your opinion in the matter, my opinion is also valid. We're both valid, so it's somewhere in the middle, when in reality, you know, obviously the random person commenting on YouTube probably not up to date with the way they should be playing their hands.
You mentioned that you get a mixed bag of comments on your YouTube videos, and I'm sure, I bet you had great comments on the YouTube video where you covered Dan Blazarian's run on ACR, I think. But I definitely, when I mentioned I was going to be talking to you today, you're definitely a very polarizing figure in the poker community. Do you try to intentionally produce content to kind of keep it that way? Do you enjoy that persona?
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It's a real mixed bag. You know, I guess for starters, when I was playing Heads Up No Limit and not doing any of the social media stuff, videos, streaming, any of that stuff, I didn't really care if people were listening to me or not, you know? I just kind of said what I thought. And a lot of people thought that I was a dick because all they knew about me was I'm the guy that just like, you know, like attacks people on Twitter and like, you know, just challenges people to play heads up. That's basically all I did. And I think that a lot of people over the course of the last year of seeing, you know, what I put out there have realized that, you know, I actually am a good person. I just did this as kind of like, you know, my online act or whatever. Here's the thing about trying to grow in any space, and especially in poker, you can't just shy away from getting involved in subjects that are controversial if you really want to grow. You're going to have to step in there and say what you think. And I found that in poker, almost everyone is a little afraid to say anything negative about anyone. And I'm not saying you should say negative things about people. I'm just saying sometimes you need to say things that have to be said. But in poker, everyone is much more quick to kind of give everyone a pat in the back, thumbs up, you're doing a great job, and never really actually say anything that might hurt anyone's feelings. And I just don't think that that's very realistic with the way the world is or the way that the world of poker is. Sometimes there are things that need to be said, and I'm not going to feel like, oh, this person has done something, you know, that isn't okay and I want to talk about it, but I'm not going to because, you know, it's going to be controversial. Sometimes you have to step in there and take the heat. And yeah, I'm okay with occasionally getting like some negative feedback on that or, you know, their fans being upset or whatever. I think it's just the necessary thing you have to do to try and speak your mind, say what is going on in the community, and you have to sometimes be willing to take what comes your way.
A nice way of dealing with the situations there. And in terms of mindset at the table, do you have any tips for, like, let's say a mid-stakes player who's looking to move to high stakes? Mindset-wise, you know, struggling with tilt perhaps or volume issues, anything that you recommend for them to do?
I get asked this tilt question a lot. It's actually one of the like 3 or 4 most asked questions that I get. You know, Doug, how do I not tilt? And whenever I hear it, it's a little tough for me because, you know, I'm very blessed in poker in that I really don't tilt, you know? So it's like I have to get in there and kind of pretend like, okay, so I do tilt now, what do I do? So I want to just keep with a grain of salt here that I'm pretending as if I had some tilt issues, what I would do. And the first thing I would recommend is, especially in cash games, not always an option in tournaments, but especially in cash games, just walk away if you're on tilt. Take a breather. Take a lap. Sit out for an orbit. Call it a sesh. Whatever you have to do. Because the thing is, playing that next orbit on tilt is going to not be profitable. There's no way your next 9 hands after you take a bad beat and you're on full tilt is going to be a profitable orbit. There's just no way. There's no way you're going to be able to take, if you're a person that tilts, you're not going to be able to take that and then play good poker. So what I recommend, walk away from the table, do a lap, whatever, go get water or coffee or whatever, and kind of think to yourself, look, this is the way poker goes. I need to play my A game in order to have a shot to be winning in the game when I get back there. And tilting will not get my money back. That's a really important thing to think to yourself. That's something I think all the time. If I take a bad beat, I say to myself, tilting is not going to get my money back. It's just not. Think about what your goals are for what you want to have happen and act based on those goals, not based on what's currently happening to you. If you're playing a tournament or something, you're not really going to have the same luxury because you can't walk away. I mean, you can walk away. I've seen plenty of players do that. But being that you're getting anteed down, you really can't afford to walk away like that. So I would just really focus on trying to move on to the next hand. Maybe think about something positive in your life. Think about things other than that hand. And definitely try to avoid feeling like the world has been unfair to you. Because the world has been unfair to you, probably. The world's an unfair place. The world doesn't owe you anything. Poker doesn't owe you your aces holding and flopping a lot of sets. Poker doesn't owe you anything. So keep that in mind. Focus on positive things. If you need to maybe fold a few closer hands to kind of get yourself through it, that's fine. But doing that will hurt your win rate. So focus on positive things. Realize that poker isn't fair and understand what your goals are and try and work to achieve them.
We usually ask our guests the worst tilt they witnessed in their career. Have you got any excellent stories from that side?
I wish I did have some better tilt stories. There's a hand that was played between Matt Kirk and Andrew Roble, where I believe Matt Kirk had been losing some pots and seemed pretty steamed up. He was debating, doing some casual other types of gambling rather than playing on the TV game. It was on the high stakes game that Poker Central ran a couple summers ago. And it involved a Queen 5 versus King High hand that is honestly one of the most amazing TV hands I've ever seen. I believe that Kirk 3-bet some suited king. Roble just cold 4-bet Queen 5 thinking he was on tilt. Kirk came over the top. They saw a flop. And basically, Kirk bet twice, and Roble just jammed the turn with Queen High. They both had absolutely nothing, and this was a 200K type pot. And then after Kirk folds, Roble just shows him the Queen 5 nothing bluff. And at that point, Matt just left. He just walked away. He's like, I'm gonna go do some other stuff, because he was just on full blown tilt. In general, most of the games I feel like I play in, especially higher stakes, I don't think there were too many people that tilt that hard because it's kind of hard to get to the higher stakes when you are tilting like that.
When you're taking your walk away from the table, Doug, can you tell us, or your hypothetical walk away from the table, I suppose, can you tell us a little bit about who Doug Polk is away from poker?
Sure. So I very much enjoy gaming. I like playing video games. I like watching major events. My two favorite games right now are Counter-Strike and Overwatch. I guess just growing up with gaming, having been such a large part of my life, my screen name online is WCG Writer, and the WCG stands for World Cyber Games because I would try to compete in that every year, and I just loved gaming. And even as I've gotten older, I still really enjoy video games. I enjoy playing them. I enjoy watching them. I enjoy the competitive nature of it. That's something that I like to try and be involved in. I like traveling a lot. I think that as poker players, if you don't like traveling, it's going to be pretty tough for you because there's so many events that you have to go to around the world, or at least around America. So I enjoy getting to see new places and experience different cultures and all of that kind of stuff too. So outside of those two things, not really that much that I do outside of poker, but those would be two for sure.
And where are you headed to next?
So I am headed to Oklahoma to play on Poker Night in America in about a week and a half. Should be fun. And then once I get back from that, I'm going to be head up to Vancouver for a scoop.
You've obviously got the Upswing Poker and those products available to people. Could you explain what it is you're offering?
Yeah, so at Upswing, our goal has been from day one to make poker training about reaching everyone. There are a lot of players out there that are new to poker or feel overwhelmed with all the poker strategy, or maybe they don't know where a good place to learn is. And so our goal has been to be very inclusive, which is why, our lowest priced, product is really like $19. Or I think we're actually about to move it down to $7. But anyway, the point is we have a very low price point for the lowest tier thing. So that if someone wants to just get some good fundamentals, if someone wants to be able to know, like, why should I be betting or checking on the flop? What kinds of hands should be in those ranges? How should I be thinking about the game of poker? It can give them like a solid overview in 1 or 2 hours, for a cheap price. And I think that that's important, and even the people that don't want to spend any money at all, like we have articles with strategy, we have, pre-flop ranges, we do, I'm doing YouTube stuff to help people. So we try to be very inclusive for everyone that wants to learn about poker. And then we also have a subscription service called the Upswing Lab, which is a monthly subscription where it's focused on small to mid stakes no limit, and any kind of multi-handed no limit. So, some cash games, a little bit of tournament stuff as well. And our approach there, I think, is much better than what the industry has been doing for years. We approach it more like a course rather than just a video library. Because for the last, 10, 15, or I guess really 10 years, everyone has been trying to do the card runners model, which is you make a site, you put a ton of videos in there, it's a free-for-all. But our view is that it should be done more like a course, and it should be taught by, 2 or 3 or just a few coaches that are definitely qualified and can give you more of a, cohesive course that doesn't have certain parts that might disagree with each other. Like, part of the problem with having 30 or 40 coaches is that what if one coach does one thing and another coach does something different that, those things can't work together? Well, now you as a viewer have to decide what do you think, and like someone's wrong or maybe they're both kind of right or whatever. But I don't think that really makes for a great learning environment for people trying to learn the game. So everything in the lab has been done by either myself or Ryan Fee. We take you from the fundamentals to pre-flop to post-flop to game elements and some of the mental side of poker. And we really try to put a focus on a congruent strategy that makes sense no matter where you're at in poker, whether you're new, whether you've been playing for a while, whether you're a mid-stakes player, and helps people get better at the game of No Limit Holdem. And we also add in a play and explain every week from either myself or Ryan Fee, as well as a module, which are like little sections of information about a specific topic every month. So that's our subscription service. And then, we also have a very high-end Heads Up No Limit course that I created for people that are, mid to high stakes level that are really looking for like the top-notch information. We launched that in February, and we were actually about to launch a Pot Limit Omaha course as well, aimed at that same type of player, taught by Jay Nandez, and we're looking at releasing that in about a week. So we kind of have a full array of things that we offer, whether you're a new player, whether you don't have any money to spend at all, or whether you're a high-stakes player looking to get better. We try and be as inclusive as we can to help everyone learn the game of poker.
Very cool. And what we'll do is we'll put a link on the email we send out for this. So if you've been listening and you click through on the email, there'll be a link on the page to Upswing, so you can check out all of Doug's stuff. So, Doug, you got through a podcast with no shots fired at all. How does that feel?
It feels actually pretty good. Especially with no shots at me. That's the especially good times.
Okay, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Loads of really useful information there for all the listeners. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me on.
So great to have Doug on the show. Gave a lot of very solid information there, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I was pretty interested to hear about Upswing Poker and Jay Nandez releasing some PLO content, because in my 8 game, PLO, man, I struggle, but
See, you're giving your opponents tips here, Adrian. They're going to know when that orbit goes around.
They'll be like, why is Talon Chick playing so scared? Why?
Well, there you go. You're going to get the course now, and all of those problems will be solved.
Yeah, definitely.
Where can everyone find you?
Hey, well, for All During Scoop, my schedule is a little bit crazy, but come find me, twitch.tv/talentchick. If you follow the channel, you can get updates when I go live. You can join me in my Discord channel. There's links to it on Twitch. And but that's going to be the best place if you want to come hang out with Team Talon as we win all the gold trophies.
All that money. And from my side, check out my Mind Coach Academy. That's on the site now. If you're dealing with any focus issues, tilt issues, we're doing webinars to resolve those issues and make you the strongest player that you can be. So that's www.pokermindcoach.com, and we'll see you all next week.
Have a good one.
You've been listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. To get future episodes delivered to you automatically, make sure to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting service. To get any resources mentioned in the episode or to listen to past shows, visit pokermindcoach.com/TMA podcast. Thanks for listening.